It's a tragic teenage love triangle. Two beautiful girls in love with one bad boy.
These two girls get lovesick over the wrong guy.
But this romantic rivalry has a very modern twist: social media.
What were some of the things that were being said back and forth?
This is my man, I'm gonna kick your ass.
A nasty war of words plays out online and over the phone.
Please tell me you would be a dumb enough to put a brand new picture of you and Josh at the beach.
Until one steamy Florida night, it goes from words to deadly weapons.
911, what is your emergency?
We have someone on the floor that's been stabbed.
All over a love triangle.
A love triangle. And a little Applebee's knife.
Rachel Wade and Sarah Ludeman grew up just a few blocks apart in the small town of Pinellas Park, Florida. They were both beautiful, attended the same high school, and ran in similar circles. But in every other way, the girls were polar opposites. Rachel, 19 years old, was a petite girl, fiercely independent, a waitress, and a blonde bombshell.
Rachel Wade was like one of the girls that all the girls wanted to be like and all the boys wanted to be with.
Sarah Ludeman was just 18 years old, a high school senior still living at home with a curfew. She loved animals and had dreams of becoming a veterinarian.
Hi, Simon.
She was kind of a daddy's girl who liked going to baseball games and country rock concerts.
But the two beautiful teens did have one thing in common: Josh Camacho.
What did these girls see in Josh?
To be honest, I don't know.
Rachel met Josh in elementary school, but her best friend Ashley DaCosta says it wasn't until high school that the sparks flew.
I never got a good feeling from him.
Ever.
Ever. Just that gut feeling, you know?
19-year-old Josh was a player, reportedly a deadbeat dad to a toddler, and according to journalist Lane DeGregory, loved being the bad boy.
I think he fashioned himself to be a little thug kid. He had pictures with guns, pictures smoking weed, pictures with pit bulls. That was the image he was striving for as a 17, 18-year-old.
And it was working.
And he was getting the girls.
Sarah never had a real boyfriend, but that would all change one fateful day when she walked into a Chick-fil-A where Josh was a cook.
He came out of the back smelling like French fries and winked at her. And no one had ever really flirted with Sarah. And so she was just completely blown away that this guy was interested in her.
Rachel and Sarah both fell hard for Josh. There was just one problem.
He didn't want each girl to find out about each other.
For months, Josh dated both Sarah and Rachel.
You have this beautiful girl working at Applebee's in her own apartment, you know, so he sees that in Rachel. And then he sees this little good girl, Sarah, Miss Innocent, you know, still living at home with her parents. So I think, you know, he had his advantages with both of them.
He had the best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
But his secret was about to be exposed in a very public way.
Rachel started putting up pictures. That's how Sarah found out. He basically said, yeah, I was sleeping with her.
Sarah got mad, very mad. But it wasn't at who you'd expect.
She wasn't giving up or being mad at him. She was like, I'm gonna get him back. I'm gonna prove, you know, that he's mine and not hers.
In a romantic tug of war, Sarah began to post her own pictures with Josh, and Rachel didn't like it one bit.
Rachel wanted Josh all to herself. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And she was going to do anything in her power to be able to make that happen.
It was the beginning of a vicious cyber smackdown between the lovesick teenagers.
Sarah would say, oh, you dropped out of school, you're a loser, you're a whore. You know, Rachel would say some things back to her, like, you know, you're ugly or fat.
And all the while, lover boy Josh continued to date both girls, fueling the feud.
It seemed like he really sort of enjoyed all of this.
He was saying, if you love me, fight for me.
And that's what they were doing.
That's exactly what they did.
The trash talking and phone calls were becoming more explosive.
Keep with me, you're the wrong person.
They would like post things like back to back. Josh would leave Sarah and go with Rachel. A status would be posted. And that would cause so much drama.
Finally, Sarah had had enough and began confronting Rachel face to face.
The stalking was really kind of going on both sides. Would you say that's true?
There's no real reports of Rachel going after Sarah.
Sarah started showing up where Rachel worked.
Sarah and her friends would come in there and harass her nonstop, try to trip her.
On Thursday nights, we had karaoke nights, and there was a song called Girl Fight, and her and a group of her friends came in and sang that song and pointed at her.
Taunting her.
Yeah, almost stalking her.
Another time, Sarah chased Rachel down in her car and sprayed her with silly string.
They tried to attack these girls. The police arrived and they asked the girls if they wanted to make a report. They said yes, and they basically talked them out of it and said, oh, it's just, girls fighting. But it's not silly to these girls as it's going on.
Because it's building and it's building and it's
Exactly.
building.
Months of online taunting and teenage bickering finally comes to an explosive head. Sarah shows up at Rachel's apartment. A neighbor tells police she begins screaming threats.
Saying, I'm gonna kick your ass, come downstairs, blah, 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 blah. And Rachel was home alone.
Rachel, now terrified, grabs a steak knife, waits for Sarah to leave, and runs to her car.
She took a steak knife with her because she didn't know who was down there.
Where was she going?
She was going to her ex-boyfriend Javier's house.
Why was she going there?
Because nobody would suspect that she would be there.
Sarah leaves Rachel's apartment and drives over to play video games with Josh and his friends. Around midnight, Sarah's dad texts her about curfew. But before she can leave, one more text comes in.
As she gets ready to leave, Rachel texts Josh and said, oh, I know you're with her.
Sarah's infuriated, but mostly worried Rachel will swoop in on Josh as soon as he's alone. Sarah reluctantly leaves for home, but first heads to get a bite to eat with Josh's sister and another friend. On the way, they get a tip Rachel is nearby.
Sarah's friends says, hey, I just saw Rachel. She's down the block with Javier. So Sarah, instead of going to McDonald's, turns around and goes to Javier's house.
Sarah, now on the brink, goes looking for trouble and finds it.
Sarah pulls up and Rachel comes running at her from the front of the house.
They both met in the middle of the street. Sarah threw the first punch. Rachel ducked her head down and just kind of started flailing her arms.
The girl fight lasts only moments. Looks like a fury of fist and hair pulling. But when it's over, one girl lay bleeding in the street.
911, what is your emergency?
There's a girl laying on the ground bleeding in the middle of the road.
Just said it hurts. And then that was it.
Could you tell where she's bleeding from?
It was right around her heart area.
Next, what did cops say that causes this reaction?
Oh my God.
And the phone call that will change everything.
I'm guaranteeing you, I'm gonna murder you.